With Season 2 officially over, finishing it with a 5-11 record, which is way better than the 1-15 season that we had in year 1. We're having progress, and I hope to continue that in Season 3. We're going to have $20 million in cap to work with this coming off season. It looks like cap doesn't carry over from season to season, meaning that the $2 million from this year doesn't get added to the next season. You'll see in the retirement page, where we only have 2 players who are considering retirement this season. DYN-CHISE was going to be on the final year of his contract, which is worth close to $5 million on the cap. That means if he retires, we get that back. He tore it up back in season 1, but the previous season he was nothing more than a tackler. He still has good speed and good coverage. The fact is, if he comes back for another season, he's probably going to regress again. I still wanted to see if he wanted to return, and in the off chance that he'd be cheaper, he doesn't want to return at all, and Dwayne Stark's Enterprise will be retiring. The other player retiring is Roundtree at the guard position. He was re-signed last offseason in the hopes that he'd be a cheap alternative as a backup. I do think he's decent for the role that he provides. I considered bringing him back, but it looks like Roundhouse Kick will be retiring. You know who else is retiring? Emmitt Smith. It was smart of us to move on from him. He had a solid 2004 campaign. Problem for Smith: Father Time is unbeaten. With those 2 retirements, we've managed to get over $25 million in cap space, which means we can make some big signings, and I'm no longer afraid. First player to look at is Ian Bandejo at fullback. He's been a backup the past 2 seasons. I'm not even sure if he's seen the field. I'm not going to be bringing him back. This was the biggest player I was afraid of this year, Larry Fitzgerald. He's on the path of being Larry Legend. We already have a really good player in Anquan Bolden. I think Bryant Johnson is also coming into his own in this position. A bit hurt most of the time, but he's still pretty good. It would make sense to move on from Larry if I wasn't trying to be a good team. We're bringing him back. He only wanted a 3-year deal, which makes me a bit worried that he's going to be wanting an even bigger contract. This season alone is worth $7 million. Freddie Jones ran it back last year for 1 more season. What's the decision this year? He's going into his 10th season, coming off an injury, but when he did return, he put up more than what he did last year when he was healthy. Truth is, I could absolutely use him on the team, but the fact is, we need to go younger in this position. He's not returning. We have another starter who needs a new contract at center, Pete Kendall. Last season I said I was most likely not going to bring him back due to his regression from year 1. I do think he's going to regress again into year 3. He's already past 10 years in the NFL, plus he wants more money than I'm willing to give, and he's not coming back. Moving over to the defense, we have our 4th string defensive end who needs a contract. Truth is, in this game, 3rd and 4th string defensive ends hardly see the field unless an injury happens, and I might plan on just keeping 3 defensive ends in the future for this series, which means Antonio Smith will not be returning. Same situation at outside linebacker. One of the backups needs a new contract. This is also another position where the backups hardly see the field unless there's an injury, and I would like to keep LeVar Fisher as a backup. He wanted a 7-year deal, and that's a no for me, but it was a relatively cheap deal, and I'd rather find a replacement in the draft. Another starter who needs a contract, Adrian Wilson. I was expecting big things from this man. I was hoping his overall was going to shoot to the moon in year 2, and instead I got a good player who puts up good seasons, but I want someone with a higher ceiling. He's also not a terribly expensive player. I just want more out of the position, and so he's not returning. Doug Bryan was brought in onto the team mid-season under a 1-year deal. I think it's fairly obvious to say at this point he's not going to return, but thanks for beating the 49ers for us. The final player who needs a contract, Scott Player. He's obviously coming back. I want him back. He had as good of a season as he did last year. He only wants a 2-year deal. If he regresses hard, we can move on after his contract ends. It's a win-win. With the re-signings over, we'll be carrying over $17 million into free agency. I'm also a bit curious to see where some of our players we let walk will go. Free agency is now among us, and it's not remotely as impressive as it was last year. I was hoping to see a lot of big names. Instead, I had to search for some deals. Will Allen was a player I was interested in to fill the void of Starks. He's still young enough, who's very fast and good coverage. It didn't hurt that he was pretty cheap, 6-year deal worth $7 million. Another player I was interested in was Des Des White. Obviously, we have two elite players, but this offense tends to spread the ball around. Having White on the team could help the passing offense be more successful. He was also pretty cheap, 6-year deal worth $7.5 million. Now, Arizona did have some competition for Will Allen with San Diego and Houston. Eventually, it was down to Buffalo, San Diego, and Arizona. And after 4 attempts and his offer going up to 6-year, $8.5 million, he did not choose to come to Arizona. We also had some competition for Des White. Denver and Seattle wanted in on him. I'm not going to let Seattle take him. Eventually, Philadelphia and Kansas City made a run at him. After 4 offers, the price increased to a 6-year deal worth $8.5 million, and he chose not to come to Arizona. Robinson was the next player I was eyeing. He's very young, great speed, good enough coverage. I want him. I gave him a 3-year deal worth $5 million. The Jets and Houston were also in talks with him, and after a second offer that increased it to $5.5 million, he also chose not to come to Arizona, so I rage ended free agency. We drew the short stick and have the 7th overall pick in the draft. It's official, and after looking through the available players in the first round, I chose to go a different route, and I'll tell you what it is in a minute. But before we head to the draft, I did some scouting beforehand to try and get an idea of what players I wanted, and I scouted a lot of players because I ended up trading out of the first round for the first pick in the second round. I also got back a 3rd and exchanged 5th. In the future, I may not do this again, as I felt dirty after making this trade. Since we no longer have the first round pick, we waited until the second round to have our pick of players to help this team, and I do want to point out that the Jets drafted 2 running backs, and that's why I felt dirty. They still draft by Mel's mock draft. I probably won't be doing this again to make it a realistic rebuild. There were so many different players that I wanted to draft. We need a center, we need a strong safety, we could add another receiver to the team, and we need a corner, we need a middle linebacker. We have options. Question is, who to pick first, and will the other players be there by the 7th pick in this round? I went Darren Francis. This is probably the best corner on the team already. Excellent speed, really good coverage. I think we found our lockdown corner of the future. The 49ers took the other corner I had considered drafting in this round. The Chargers also took a strong safety I was hoping would be there in the 3rd. The one player I really wanted to draft first was Marshall. At inside linebacker, and Seattle took him. With less options than I thought I'd have with the 7th overall pick in the second round, I considered drafting Cole, a receiver. Eventually I settled on center since it is a priority for the team. Ted Marshall is a solid center, especially for one that will be thrown into the starting lineup day 1. I think he'll be better with time, but this season there's going to be a lot of trial by fire for these young guys. The Bengals ended up scooping Cole in the second round, and at this point most of the players I wanted were taken. So with our first pick in the 3rd round, I went Harvey Salazar. This was the 3rd safety I was interested in. I wanted Earl Marsh, who was selected in the second round, and I also wanted Byron Mitchell, who was available when I was selecting, but was convinced that Salazar was the better option. And in the end, all the strong safeties in this draft weren't fantastic, so we'll just have to wait and see how they develop. Selected another cornerback. Is he great? No. Is he fast? Yes. Is he probably going to sit the bench and learn his first year? Most likely. It's no secret that in this game corners regress quickly, so I just wanted to make sure that we have players behind those who regress, who could come in and take over eventually. That's who Milton Sims is. In the 4th round, I went inside linebacker. It's clear that McKinnon will be on his way out soon. We need to prepare for that and have some depth, so we don't need to worry about that next season, and this is our solution. Solid tackler, good thumper. I think it's a good pick. Also, I forgot we had a 2nd, 4th round pick, this coming from the Dolphins trade. I drafted an outside linebacker. This was a depth signing. LeVar Fisher left the team. We needed some depth in case of an injury, and he's pretty decent. His strength is pass rushing, so we'll see if he can develop. We also have 2 5th round picks, the first being used on a kicker. You knew we were going to have to draft one eventually. He got a good leg, but accuracy could be better. Trial by fire. With our 2nd, 5th round pick, we selected a tight end. Freddie Jones is no longer on the team, and we need his replacement, and this man ain't him. McCormick may have bricks for hands, but he's essentially an extra offensive lineman. In the 6th round, we selected another quarterback. Each year, we keep drafting quarterbacks, and this year is no different. He's not here for a starting job. I just plan on moving on from Navarre. This is his replacement, and in the final round, I selected defensive tackle, purely depth. That is all. He's not good. It's fine. I did want to show that Freddie Jones went to San Diego, where he'd be taking a job away from Antonio Gates. Pete Kendall landed in New Orleans as a backup. I swear the computer isn't very good at some of these free agent signings. LeVar Fisher will be starting in New York with the Giants. I like this signing, and I hope he has a good season. While Adrian Wilson will be sharing duties with Troy Polamalu. Yeah, the computer's not very good at signing free agents. We're getting close to season 3 starting with the simulating of the preseason, and let's see if there's any injuries. We lost Woods, who was a backup outside linebacker for the rest of the season. Well, that's great. Our backup center will be out for 2 weeks, while Hodgins will be out for 5 weeks. I hope this isn't a foreshadow for how this season will be. Larry Legend is now the best player on the team and only 1 point away from being a part of the legendary 99 club. The only rating that really changed a lot was his consistency, and I wonder how much of that impacts the game when simulating. His buddy Anquan Bolden is also in the elite club again. This time he didn't really change much. Catching went up by 1, and leadership, he's as consistent as it gets. We'll see if it translates to the field. The last elite player on the team, which means Leonard Davis is no longer elite, is Matt Light. Nothing really improved besides consistency again, and I wonder if it's a fake rating to influence overall in this game and doesn't really do anything substantial. We'll see. Our quarterback room is by far better this season than last year. I expect Gray to take the leap in his sophomore season and take us to our first playoff appearance. Guzman will be the backup and Davis will be the emergency quarterback on the team, leaving Navarre as the odd man out. For those curious, Kurt Warner is still the starter in New York, with Eli not progressing much at all, while Martin May, the first quarterback taken in the draft last year, had an overall boost for never even having a snap. Well, that's not fair. I'm a bit disappointed that after winning the rushing title last season, Austin Gordon had only a 2-point increase. Since we also learned that cap doesn't really carry over to the next season, there's really no point to trading ship, since we can still utilize him this year as a backup before moving on from him. At fullback, Hodgins is injured to start the year. We'll most likely look for his replacement in free agency. He's also on the final year, so his replacement will probably be his permanent one for the future. It's obvious that Fitzgerald and Bolden will be the starters going into this year. The drop-off after them is quite large. Johnson isn't a terrible player, but Pohl isn't going to scare anyone, and Casper regressed this season. So that's the only reason why I really wanted to draft Cole, but we'll have to figure it out next off season. I think Chad Gross had the ability to become a solid tight end, but McCormick will be the starter this year, leaving Hodel as the emergency depth. It was clearly the right choice to move on from Pete Kendall. Ted Marshall looks to be the future leader of this offensive line. Disappointing that Davis regressed this season, leaving me to question if I should re-sign him for the following season. I'm not sure yet. His salary is huge, and I'm sure he's going to want a lot more to potentially regress again. While Baker is slowly becoming a solid player, I'm just worried he's also going to be expensive when his contract runs out. It looks like LJ Shelton has hit his peak, and for the price that I'm paying for him, I might plan on moving on from him soon. While Matt Light continues to be the blindside blocker, I'm beginning to get frustrated with the defensive tackle position. I don't understand how Dockett hasn't improved. While McCoy suddenly hit a wall in progression, this may be a group that I look into upgrading next offseason. There's no cheap way of moving on from Burt Berry. He's very expensive and his penalty is still high. I might be able to move on from him next season, but even then, he's still a productive player. Will it be worth it? While Calvin Pace will be the opposite of him, the biggest surprise is Wakefield improving. I have a feeling he's going to be expensive. At outside linebacker, both Dansby and Thompson have improved slightly. I guess this helps keep Dansby cheap going to the re-signing period next year. Position is pretty much the same. I said it when I signed him, we're going to move on from McKinnon once his contract is over. Swan or Warren should be able to take over the starting job. I'm upset we weren't able to get Marshall in the draft, but Warren seems like a nice consolation prize. The cornerbacks room is probably the most improved room. Clearly the rookie Francis is the starter, but Mac Daddy might be the starter. Opposite of him, it could be Griffith, who's blown up, but I like to keep him on special teams for now. Hill could also be a starter, while Milton Sims will probably be on a reserved role if injuries happen. I'm happy with this group. Let's be real, no matter who we drafted, no one was going to be as good as Adrian Wilson. With that being said, I don't think Wilson was living up to his potential, considering that Shabazz did a pretty decent job in his absent 1 year. I'm okay okay with the way it is for now. At free safety, the position has hardly changed. Dexter Jackson slightly regressed, but that could also be his consistency rating forcing that minor drop. I'm not worried about it. We started Neil Rackers last season, moved on to Doug Bryan, and now we have the rookie. Let's see how the season goes. While Scott Player will continue to be the punter, but he's regressed, don't be surprised if I don't renew his contract when it runs out. We're not quite done with the roster. I said I was moving on from the VAR. I'm letting him go. Nathan Hodel is another player, emergency depth, but I don't think we're going to need it. I'm going to let him go. Ronaldo Hill is another player I wanted to move on from, trying to get something out of him before we let him walk next offseason. Turns out corners are worth two things, Jack and shit, and Jack just left town and I decided to keep him instead. I did sign a guard to replace Roundtree, who retired in the past offseason. He's depth, nothing more. Don't expect him to ever see the field. I also wanted depth at defensive end. Jermaine Joseph was signed to the team. He's an excellent pass rusher, decent run stuffer. My thinking here is Wakefield was going to want more than what Joseph got. Joseph is younger and can develop under a 2-year deal. We can see how much he improves and re-sign him when it's easier to move on from Barry. I also signed a veteran in Brent Boyer, another depth signing. I wanted a well-rounded player who can come in for a few games if an injury happens. Hopefully that doesn't happen. He's replacing Woods, who will be put on IR. The last signing was a fullback, since Hodgins will be out for about a month. Roger Lawson caught my eye as a receiving threat. He could be helpful to check down guy on the team. We'll just have to wait and see how it plays out. So let's begin the first game of the year, the season, and home opener against the New Orleans Saints in the fourth quarter, tied 17 each. Final 2 minutes, Arizona's ball on 3rd and 6. Marcel Ship converts the 3rd down, then Gray throws an interception. New Orleans doesn't take the field goal. They score a touchdown, one last chance to tie this time. Clifton Gray throws another interception. What sucks about the final 2 minutes is that Gray was doing really well before melting down. The running game was also non-existent. The kicker also missed a pair of kicks. This should have been an easy win. Instead, we're 0-1. In some more bad news, Carlos Dansby landed on the injury report, out for 2 weeks. They're going to miss him against a very mobile Michael Vick and the Atlanta Falcons this week. Fourth quarter, final 2 minutes again. This time, the Cardinals need to make a defensive stop. 3rd and 5. They stop work well done from getting the first down, and on 4th down, they commit a penalty, extending the drive. Now on 3rd and 1, they can't stop done, effectively ending the game. So after the meltdown from Gray last week, this week was just a poor performance. Without Griffith's touchdown return, it wouldn't have been as close, and I was really close to benching him against the 49ers, but for week 3, he's going to continue to be the quarterback. To start the game, Francis had an interception, setting up the Cardinals in the red zone. Then Gray throws 2 incompletions and a sack. Then later in the game, he was sacked, finally made his first completion to Johnson, then 2 straight incompletions again, followed by an interception, and that was more than enough for me. He was benched. Russell Guzman struggled last year against the 49ers, going into the 4th. Niners ball at the 1. They're slowly moving it before Rashawn Woods scores his 75-yard touchdown to gain the lead, the 2 points to make it a field goal game. Guzman on the first play of the drive finds Gordon for a 12-yard pass. Then he gets Anquan Bolden for a game-leading touchdown pass. The defense does its job in stopping the 49ers. All they need to do is run the clock. Just can't run enough of it, going 3 and out, but a penalty extends the drive. Then on another 3rd down, this time Gordon gains just enough to end the game. Do I even have to say it? Guzman will be the starting quarterback moving forward. We might be 3-0 if he was starting from the beginning. Remember when we were healthy? I don't. Fitzgerald is now out for 3 weeks with migraines, and Mac Daddy is out for 7 weeks. But here is the litmus test for the Cardinals. If we beat the Rams, this could be our year. We go into the 4th, down by 13, just over 3 minutes in the game. Guzman would lead the team down the field, special thanks to a big penalty to cut the lead to 5 points. For some reason, they went for 2. They then forced a 3-and-out, getting the ball back with just over 40 seconds left. Guzman moves the team across midfield, and with 11 seconds left to go in the game, and on the final play, Bolden is tackled after a 25-yard play, giving the Rams a heart attack. This team didn't quite beat the Rams, but they sure gave them a scare, and I think we found our quarterback for the rest of the season. Guzman has been playing lights out. The only letdown this season is a slow start from Gordon. It's going to continue to be slow thanks to another injury. It's still early in the season. A win here against the Seahawks would put us back in a good position within the division. The fourth quarter tied 10-all, and Guzman throws an interception, giving Seattle great field position, and they take advantage of it. Can Guzman shake off the turnover? Finds Fitzgerald for a first and continues to extend the drive with Bolden. A penalty gets them across midfield. A clutch third down completion of Johnson. Another third down completion of Bolden. Just over a minute left in the game. The biggest disappointment this season, Gordon. 20 attempts for 36 yards. Guzman can't carry the team on fourth down. Seattle's defense makes the stand. I've also noticed that we're seeing a lot more ship this season than last season. I'm not sure what's going on with Gordon, but it's not good. Guzman isn't good enough to carry the team on his own. And another injury, Nate Poole. This team is brittle this season. We're 1-4 taking on the 4-0 Dolphins. We're playing teams close again this season. I believe we can win. That's exactly what happens. Guzman has been playing phenomenal this season. I never expected him to play this well. Fully went into the season expecting Gray to be our franchise quarterback, and it looks like the 7th round pick might be the future. Did I mention that we're really brittle this season? Baker and Salazar are now injured. Bye week, we're getting closer to mid-season. We can still stay close within the division with a win here against the Minnesota Vikings. We go to the start of the fourth. A block punt gives the Cardinals the ball near the red zone. Bolden putting them inside the 10. Drive would stall out, forcing another kick, giving them a 9-7 lead. Minnesota's next drive, they would easily get across midfield, but Arizona would clutch up and force a fourth down, forcing a long field goal that is missed. Cardinals never gave the ball back to the Vikings. They lost to them last year, but this season the Cardinals are clutching up in the final minutes of games. They're now just one game away from being 500 for the first time in this series, past the midway point. They host the 49ers for week 9. They can get the sweep and be one game down from the division leader, Rams. It's the final 3 minutes. Gordon came to play. They're down by 8 points, but Guzman completely disappeared, forcing a punt before the 2-minute warning. They would get the ball back with 13 seconds left, and Guzman to Gordon to make it a 2-point game. And they kick the extra point. It was such a rough game for Guzman that they didn't even show his passing stats. I honestly can't believe they didn't go for 2. Do you guys want me to continue doing these game cast simulations, or do you think they're ridiculous? Oh, also, Barker ended up breaking his shoulder now. We're back to being 2 games under 500, taking on the Buccaneers, and if there's a positive to take this season, it's that this team is actually winning games before the fourth quarter. I'm happy to see the team win without having to go to the final drive of the game. Signs of a team that's getting better. Oh, also, Salazar, he made it back to the injury list. We now take on the Carolina Panthers to get to 500 for the first time past mid-season. We've had their number in each season. Can we keep it that way? Fourth quarter, final 2 minutes, Cardinals ball, and Guzman puts up a master class on how to march the ball down the field efficiently, capping it off with a Gordon touchdown to take a 14-7 lead. I'm not prepared to call it here. I've seen this team give up a game-winning touchdown in the past, and they sack their home on first down, and on second down, Dexter Jackson seals the win. And for the first time in this series, we are at 500 past the midway point. This offense has been so much better thanks to Gordon shaking off the rust, and we're in prime position for a playoff push now. We started 1-4, we've been 4-1 since, now taking on the lowly Buffalo Bills to go above 500 for the first time since last season in week 1. Okay, maybe we're not as good as we think. The offense struggled again, the defense isn't too much of a problem, and I think we're going to have to consider looking into an elite quarterback in the next offseason. We're still not out of contention for the division here. A win against the Rams, remember we gave them a thriller earlier this season, will put us in a good position. I really like Guzman. I do. I think he's had some really good games, and I just don't think he can elevate the team. He's a game manager, which is better than whatever Gray was doing for us, which was, turning the ball over. It sucks. We lost this game. This was a statement game, but it looks like we're still the same old Cardinals. We're now 3 games down from the division lead and 3 games down from the number 5 seed, 2 games down from the final seed. Judging from our final stretch of games, this doesn't look good for us. If we can win out, they definitely deserve a spot in the playoffs, but it'll be a tough task. First up, Seattle. Fourth quarter, final 3 minutes, Cardinals ball, and all they gotta do is run the ball, and they don't even consider passing it, settling for a field goal to force Seattle to score a game-winning touchdown. Final 2 minutes of the game, they easily get across midfield, then the momentum shifts because of a drop by Kyle Johnson on second down, a sack by Calvin Pace on third down, and then an incompletion on fourth down. The Cardinals defense makes the stand. That win over Seattle will make it possible for them to win the division. They're going to need a lot of help, but there's still 3 games left. If they win out, anything is possible. Also, Griffith with a punt return for a touchdown. You have no idea how valuable he is as a returner. We're still 2 games out of a playoff spot, but the win against the Eagles this week will only be down by 1 game going into the final 2 weeks. We'll also be without McCoy for the rest of the regular season, possibly even the playoffs if we make it. This is our 3rd statement game of the year. Are we the same old Cardinals? We're still the same old Cardinals. At least we already improved over our 5-win season from last year. Yeah, I don't expect them to win any more games this year. Technically, we're not completely eliminated from the playoffs. We could win out and with help, a lot of help, win the division or make the playoffs, but that's a lot of wishful thinking considering that we're playing against the 9-5 Jets. We still have to win for any of the other stuff to matter. In the fourth quarter, and the Cardinals are actually up 14-9, it doesn't last long as the Jets just march down the field for an easy touchdown to reclaim the lead. The Cardinals would get across midfield but stalled, punting the ball. The defense forces the Jets to a 3-and-out. This will be the last chance for the Cardinals to tie the game, and Guzman Gordon for a touchdown. Looks familiar. The Jets have a chance to tie it after a missed extra point, getting to midfield, and the Cardinals defense forces 4 straight incompletions to win the game. Are the Jets frauds? I don't know, but what I do know is that Guzman is doing just enough to make me think he could be a franchise quarterback, and I have a feeling he's going to disappoint me next season. We are now officially eliminated from the playoffs. It was nice to be a part of it for once, even if we didn't actually get in. With that being said, a win here could have us finish with our first non-losing season. Bring it on. Tied at 20, under 3 minutes, Cardinals ball, and Guzman throws an interception. The Cardinals did force a 3-and-out, Patriots kicking a field goal to go up by 3. Another chance, this time to at least tie the game, potentially win it for Guzman, and he moves the team down the field into field goal range, a 51-yarder from here, and they go for it, incomplete, and they wouldn't get the ball back again.
Cardinals, Patriots. Logan is probably thinking end zone even though it's at the 24-yard line. They need just a little bit for the first down. There he goes down the sideline. One-handed grab for 6.
It bothers me so much that they didn't even try to kick the field goal. The rookie kicker we drafted even made a 50-yarder once. I don't understand why they didn't try to kick it. These simulations make no sense to me sometimes. So the season is over, and it's insane to me that there were only 5 losing teams in the NFC. If we won, there would have been only 4. This was a tough year to sneak into the playoffs. There's always next year. I had such high hopes for Clifton Gray. I don't know if some of you would agree with the benching, but I gave him 2 full games. The second game was awful, and the third one was even worse, and it was only 2 drives. I felt like I had to bench him. This offseason is going to be tricky. Russell Guzman had a good season. I was worried he was going to be terrible based on his last game against the 49ers in his first year, but apparently they had the number 1 pass defense by a mile, so I'm still surprised that he performed as well as he did. Is he the future? I don't know. I would like to see all my options before I decide. I don't know if you saw, but the Bears are 12-4. Did I make a mistake by letting Josh McCown go? The biggest disappointment this season is the regression of Austin Gordon. He was looking like a Hall of Fame running back, but this season he took a step back. It didn't help that we have a new center and a guard. Baker missed half the season. He still had over 1,100 yards. Marcel Shipp performed as well as I thought he would. I don't think he's going to return next season. Anquan Bolden led the team in receiving yards. I think we also have to take into consideration consideration that the quarterbacks aren't helping this passing game succeed as much as they should be. Bolden is a 1,000-yard receiver looking like a solid number 2 with these quarterbacks. Larry Fitzgerald is almost in the 99 club, and he's looking like he's nowhere near putting up that kind of performance. I think it's time to make a drastic change at quarterback to take advantage of these playmakers. They're just collecting dust at this point. One surprise was Brian Johnson. He wasn't able to stay healthy for the entire season the past 2 years, but this season he was able to appear in all 16 games and he played really well. Should I move on from Anquan Bolden? Dexter Jackson led the team in tackles this season. He's a bit of an enigma. He was a good pass rusher in year 1, a good coverage player in year 2, and he was pretty mid in year 3. I'm not exactly sure how to feel about him moving forward. Maybe this was just a down year. Burt Berry led the team in sacks. That's kind of crazy to me that he was still putting up good numbers even in his 10th season in the NFL. I don't know if he can keep it up, but the cost of his contract will be the deciding factor on if he retires a Cardinal. Carlos Dansby has been a consistently solid player. I like him a lot on this team. He did miss a game, but even with one less game, he still performed just as well. He's definitely a key player on this rebuild. Calvin Pace is a sneaky, quiet, good player on this team. Is he great? No. Is he serviceable though? Yes. Do I want more out of him? Oh yeah. I think whenever Barry leaves the team, this will be the true test if Pace can step up. He's still young. I'm unsure why Darnell Dockett didn't get a boost to his ratings. I think he's been a solid defensive tackle for this team. Hopefully after the season he'll get a boost. Ronald McKinnon was the other player on the team with over 100 tackles this season. He's had over 100 in each of the past 3 seasons. The issue is he's on the back end of his career and I don't see him returning next season. But I think he can still be solid enough to be impactful somewhere. Darren Francis tied the team high of 9 interceptions, and that has only been accomplished by Dwayne Starks. I'm surprised by how well this kid played. He's another key piece of this rebuild moving forward, and he probably even won Defensive Rookie of the Year, right? You gotta be joking me. I knew this sumbitch was gonna bite me in the ass, and he already did it twice now. I wanted to get rid of Ronaldo Hill at the start of the season. He just, ended up being the second leader in interceptions. Don't expect him to be back next season, but good for him for picking up his stock. Blake McCoy has been a bit of a letdown on his stat sheet, but he's primarily a run stuffer, and I can't fault him when the team has been better in stopping the run. Timothy Chavez could have absolutely sent the Patriots game into overtime. I still don't understand why they didn't let him kick it. He started the year rough. He got better as the season went on. Scott Player also had his best season as a punter. I don't see why his rating went down, but we'll see if it goes back up next year. Also, Benjamin Griffith had 2 more returns for a touchdown this season. I wonder if that'll be good enough to break him past the 80 rating next season. Rookie Salazar was injured a few times this season, but I still think he was better than whatever Adrian Wilson would have given us. Milton Sims didn't get much playing time. A surprise was Andre McCormick being a bigger receiving threat than I thought he'd be this season. Good on him. Let's see who gets through the wild card. Hopefully not the Rams, am I right? I can never count on the Packers for anything. Surprisingly, the only wild card team that made it was the fraud Jets, taking on the potential fraud Patriots. Also, Washington takes on the McCown Bears. Turns out the Pats really are frauds. Also, is McCown and the Bears good? They take on the Rams in the conference round. Hopefully they can eliminate them so they don't have bragging rights again this season. Good. It's a Super Bowl 40 rematch. I kind of want to see McCown earn a ring. Is that wrong? I should have just said nothing. Thank you all for watching Season 3. Next year, we have some issues to clean up, like getting a proven elite quarterback to elevate this offense. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but imagine if we nailed the Hasselbeck sweepstake. We'd be a Super Bowl bound team right now for sure.